Good afternoon, everybody. So glad you could join us. I know that people are still, logging in, but we wanted to get started because we have a packed agenda for what is going to be the first of many, Brooklyn College community consultations. And the discussion that we have today, the presentation discussion we have today, is 100% based on questions that came from you and your colleagues. There was many opportunities for people to do some questions and suggestions, and there will continue to be others, but we thought it made the most sense to actually you know speak about them and and just really address what's on people's minds. Again, this is the first of many discussions, and we're going to continue to build on knowledge base. This open forum is being co-hosted by several individuals. It's our faculty council campus planning committee, our office of facilities, and our office of environmental health and safety are running this event. And with that, I want to turn it over to our moderator, Jen Ball, who is the chair of our faculty council campus planning committee, and she will be moderating. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen now. Thank you all.
Thanks for coming. As Alan mentioned, we're starting off with a short presentation, kind of giving the overview. Then we're moving on to questions that were submitted in advance, and then we will take questions from the chat. And we get up to that point, we'll tell you sort of how that's going to run. If for some reason we don't get to all of the questions today, we are still going to gather things out of the chat and we'll work to get those questions answered. And our focus today is on facilities and spaces. Just to remind you that we are not covering questions about budget or things like that. And so to introduce right away our panelists, we have Carrie Sadovnik, Director of Environmental Health and Safety, Joe Nigro, who is our Administrative Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds, and we have Dura Darshini Lee, who is Acting Director of Facilities Planning. So we will get started with Carrie.
Okay, thank you, Jen, and I want to just thank Alan and the Faculty Council's Campus Planning Committee for convening this forum. I look forward to hearing all of your questions and having the opportunity to respond. I'll start off by saying happy 51st anniversary of Earth Day. I think we're back on track in today's global summit. The U.S. has pledged to cut emissions by half by 2030. And the college and CUNY have quite a lot of work ahead of us on this, but a few of us on this call meet biweekly with Sustainable CUNY, along with Professor Mika Tomkowitz and Student Representative Chica Otisi. And we're identifying ways to reduce and manage our emissions, including we just purchased a nitrogen and carbon calculator to enable us to track and manage and make transparent our carbon footprint. Any of you who are interested, please reach out to me separately. So I just want to give framework to this talk by saying planning is what we've been doing planning. I mean, set the plan aside, the planning is where it's at. We are, in the early spring, President Anderson convened a response team to address the evolving situation. But when we realized, and it became very clear that this was a pandemic that was going to take us some time to get through, we transitioned towards planning and the Reentry Review Board, which she mentioned in her letter yesterday. I want to assure you that at every step, your health and safety and the safety of our campus has been her priority, and it has been our priority, which has meant a very slow but safe transition back to in-person activity on campus. This early work culminated in our campus return or reentry plan, which is posted on our website. It was posted back in August. It was reviewed and approved by CUNY. It has quite a lot of detail. It was our summer 2020 work, and it was done in preparation for bringing research back. This plan describes a staged return to full operations. It assumes that there is low to medium herd immunity and that we have masking and social distancing in place. And this is our scenario A. And we're going to continue to operate under that scenario and that planning assumption through the summer. Scenario B is where we anticipate being in the fall, but it's really a very wide berth of scenarios. And you know, while we are
Turn the volume down on the speaker.
While we see that our numbers are better today, in fact, we have below 5% positive case rate, down from over 6% over the last 4 weeks, and nearly half of all adult New Yorkers in the city have received one dose. 32% are vaccinated. We know that vaccination hesitancy is real, and some of the numbers that you may have seen is 25% of Americans are not sure that they're going to get the vaccine. So we have to plan with this uncertainty in mind. In addition, we know the variants are a consideration, as are other things such as regulations and whether or not herd immunity is a waning or a long-term effect of the vaccination. Scenario C, which we all are have our eyes set on, the long term, is full operations, full normal operations where we have reached herd immunity and we no longer require social distancing or mask wearing, and there are no or decreased remote work or online options. A lot of uncertainty, and we remain in this scenario A today, but the campus is really not lifeless. So I just want to give you guys a peek into a few of the people who are on campus. Starting in the upper left corner, our public health ambassadors, student ambassadors, Zainab Jamil and Romaine Hall, who have been actively on the ground today. In fact, they're on campus walking all of the spaces, and we'll talk more about that. In the middle, we have Professor DeToro's students in the Speech and Learning Center, Speech and Hearing Center, students who are on campus, but as you can see, they're often working remotely. Upper right-hand corner, theaters, one of theater's classes from the fall, meeting on the quad, and in the lower right-hand corner, chemistry students doing the hard work of General Chem in New Ingersoll. So it's a pleasure to be able to walk around. I am on campus today. It is gorgeous, and thanks to Steve Aliano and all of his staff for continuing to make it beautiful. I can't wait to welcome you all back. I'm going to pass it back to Professor Ball. Thanks.
So thank you very much, Carrie. We're now moving into the questions that were sent to us in advance. And then we will move on to the chat. And I see people are already starting to put questions into the chat. I just want to say also a quick thank you to Marcus Richardson and David Finkelstein and Professor Dorothy Neve DeToro, who are working the chat for us today. So our first question would be for Carrie. What is being done to meet CDC recommendations and state, city, and CUNY guidelines?
Okay. So first thing, I'm just going to, before I jump into this piece, I'm just going to say that, you know, we meet on a regular basis. We're meeting weekly. The Reentry Review Board, or RRB for short, meets weekly. This helps us stay, all of these cross-functional, cross-departmental relationships and lines of communication that have been forged are critical. It means that, you know, as we, this meeting really helps to keep those lines of communication open and really solid. I also attend twice weekly meetings with CUNY, my counterparts across the campus, or across all of CUNY and other campuses. And Alan, as the senior coordinator, coronavirus coordinator, meets with his counterparts. And Ayana Marie Richards, who is our coronavirus campus liaison, meets with her counterparts to discuss the HR side of things and positive case management. We are also getting subject matter expertise input at the request and suggestion of some of those of you on this call. We are adding additional representation. We have expanded this team of people since the summer to include PSC representatives from the film department, and I might get this wrong, Larry, but financial aid, I believe. They've been really critical to ensuring we're on the right track and that we reflect everyone's voices in making some of these big decisions. We are also, yesterday I had a great conversation with Professor, Health and Nutrition Science Professor Jolanta Kruznicka, who has subject matter expertise in health and safety and has worked on with various companies and campuses, and she brings an important voice to this conversation. In addition, we have two professors who I'm going to get their names wrong, so I'm going to just tell you that we take it very serious. We take your input very seriously, and it's important. We can't do this on our own or in a vacuum, for sure. So we've already put in place many of the measures, and it's important to remember the top 4 preventative measures to reduce risk, which we keep getting out through our communications, which is stay home if you're sick, physical distancing, which we do through a variety of ways, but we're going to talk about the facilities piece of that today, mask mandates and wearing a face covering, pushing and supporting hand hygiene, and pushing and supporting easy testing. As you know, back in December, CUNY established agreements with Health and Hospital to make that easier for you all to get priority testing. And in addition, CUNY has launched Vax Up CUNY campaign. Vaccines are free, have been tested to be safe, and are highly effective. I ask every one of you on this call, get vaccinated. If you can, ask everyone in your family who can and is able to get vaccinated. It's our primary way that we're going to be successful in the fall. Okay, now back to the presentation. Space utilizations, because this is really focused on healthy environments and healthy operations. We've been going through sets of our set planning assumptions and what are those physical distancing rules. And that's really, outlined what is required in terms of assessing our spaces and determining whether we can use the closest but still physically distanced spacing, or whether we need to de-densify further. Marcus, could you just make sure? Okay. So, and then, you know, we've only recently gotten the enrollment and schedule data, and we're using that to match up. Have we prioritized those priority instructional spaces that have already been assigned to courses for the fall, in-person courses or hybrid courses in the fall? And then there are those spaces that we know we need to consider, which are those large lecture halls and other large spaces that might support student study time and or Zoom attendance on online courses. And matching and reconfiguring those locations. Oh, I kind of already said that. So we can move on to the next slide. Ventilation is a key, and I'm going to repeat this later, but CDC has come out earlier this month, with the statement that the primary way that this disease is transmitted is airborne and droplet, and not through, or very little through surface, contaminated surfaces or fomites. Ventilation has been at the forefront of what we have been looking at really from the beginning. Those in the environmental health and safety field and epidemiologists knew early on that we were looking at something different than, say, the common cold or something as, you know, some other things, other diseases that have more surface contamination transmission. So ventilation, reviewing those ventilation designs, and I'm going to let Joe speak to these more specifically, making adjustments where needed, adding enhancements or changes to our operation, upgrading where we need to, and then continuously, it's really more than this just linear, it's a feedback loop. This is a ventilation, and really all that we do really should be, you know, we're constantly checking what we do and having that inform our operation. And then lastly, building hygiene and maintenance. This is still very important, and I know it's something that we've had a lot of focus on over the past couple of years with BC Fix It. The campus is as sparkling as ever. It really is. The custodial staff have done a tremendous amount of work, and we'll talk more about that, but we have plans for adding additional touchless features. Some of these are awaiting procurement. Some are actively being procured, but we're going to do what we can to add these features in high volume locations. As I mentioned, the custodial staff, these teams have been going through and ensuring that our floors are sparkling, but they are also, and they embarked on this maybe a month ago, starting to do deep cleaning and dusting in departmental offices and other offices. Classrooms received a clean disinfection and seal at the beginning of this, and now they're going back, and certainly before we've reopened any spaces. We have signage everywhere. CUNY is on our campus every month doing inspections. Their focus is often signage. Where we don't have people, we don't have a lot of signage, so we're going to focus on that in the coming months. And the last thing, just as a reminder, there are systems that support occupied spaces like domestic water, our cooling towers, and those things continue to get preventative maintenance. And one of the things that kind of part and parcel of having a building closed down is recognizing that we don't want those systems to sit stagnant. So with water systems, we do a periodic flushing to make sure that we keep things moving. I think this might be where I turn it back over to Jen.
Okay. Next question for Duradarshini. What are the plans for social distancing and occupancy limits for high traffic areas. So everything, classrooms, offices, shared spaces, bathrooms, elevators.
Thank you, Jennifer. So we have been conducting space analysis campus-wide, and in order to determine occupancy limits, we've been applying social distancing guidelines recommended by CUNY and by CDC. These are based on ventilation, the type of ventilation we have in the spaces with which Carrie and Joe are going to speak in more detail about later. Basically, for spaces with mechanical ventilation, we're using a 6-foot safety margin around each person to determine maximum occupancy. And for spaces with less than optimal ventilation, we're using 12-foot safety margins as per CUNY's reentry guidelines. So Marcus, if you can pull up the slide, please. Thank you. So these are two examples of different classroom types, an auditorium and a typical smart classroom with tablet armchairs. So on the left, you see Woody Tanger, normally seats 144 people. If we maintain a minimum of 6 feet between seats, it can seat 19 people. On the right, you have 2615 James, normally holds 25 students. With a 6-foot safety margin, it accommodates 7 students. So because occupancy with social distancing is often referred to as a percentage of full occupancy, I wanted to clarify that this percentage, it depends on how densely this space is occupied during normal use. So auditorium seating is high density. So for Woody Tanger, the socially distanced occupancy is like 14% of normal occupancy. But for 2615 James, the socially distanced occupancy is 28%. Okay, so but for both spaces, we're applying the same 6-foot safety margin. So the percentage it's a way of quantifying or measuring the resulting occupancy, but that's not our basis for planning occupancy. So we're not like taking 50% or 30% of the normal occupancy. We're looking at the 6-foot safety margin, if that's what's required, or a 12-foot safety margin, if that's what's required. So similarly, we're using the 6-foot and 12-foot safety margins, depending on ventilation, in order to plan occupancy for all the other kinds of occupied spaces, lounges, labs, shared office spaces. And for hallways, by virtue of limiting the overall capacity in the building, so hallways and other common spaces will be less dense. And as Carrie said, we have a lot of visual cues for social distancing, a lot of messaging, 6-foot markers, directional arrows, throughout the buildings. Bathrooms and elevators. In the buildings and floors that are currently in use, maximum occupancy levels for the bathrooms and elevators have been established and they're posted. Like in the bathrooms, some stalls and fixtures have been taken out of service temporarily in order to maintain social distancing. And this is going to be done across campus for all the buildings, all bathrooms, all elevators. So that's our approach.
Carrie, people would like to know, what is the plan to maintain the cleanliness of public spaces according to CDC standards?
Okay, thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, CDC recently updated their guidance to recommend cleaning high-touch surfaces and shared objects once a day to reflect this newer understanding of the transmission of the virus, that the infection is not through contaminated surfaces and objects. And that's why there's this bigger focus on distancing and ventilation. But early on, the college implemented an enhanced schedule of cleaning and disinfection of high-touch surfaces and shared objects. We did environmental health and safety, met with custodial staff and provided them with training on the use of EPA registered disinfectants. We verified that the cleaning products that we used were effective and listed by EPA. We also purchased electrostatic sprayers to assist our employees with cleaning and disinfecting, particularly when we have a larger area and after someone tests positive who's been on campus, just to help with that, that workload. It's not necessary, just the spraying and wiping is sufficient. But the custodians have been doing this every day since we've been back on campus, and they maintain logs. We are required to maintain logs, and I would say we are in the practice of posting those logs physically by in a central location after we have a positive case on campus, just to give people that assurance. We're working on how to make that more transparent, maybe something akin to the bathroom logs that we're all used to seeing. In addition, the college provides, and we have in place where we have in-person classes and where we have occupied offices, dual-purpose sanitizing and disinfecting wipes. We have these wipe stations throughout the campus so that commonly used hard surfaces can be wiped down easily before and after use. And as I mentioned, all unoccupied buildings received a one-time detailed deep cleaning and disinfection. I'll be specific about that. Our classrooms received and instructional spaces received a one-time disinfection using EPA registered disinfectants in the spring. And then in advance of the fall semester, we removed a lot of the lounge furniture so that, and other seating, so that the custodians would have less surfaces to wipe down and disinfect. And as staff and faculty return over this coming period of time before fall 2021, we're going to be working with you to help to prepare your space and help you prepare your space for higher levels of occupancy, including reducing these shared objects and clearing off, well, don't look at my office as an example, but we all need to declutter. Decluttering is key to helping us keeping those surfaces clean, especially those that are shared. I think that might be a time to pass it back to Jen.
Okay, actually, Carrie, we have another question for you, and I also see that other people are adding similar questions to the chat on this. How will COVID-19 transmission be addressed? So positive case tracking on campus, how will that be done?
Okay, so I don't know if we have shared it in the chat, but I do want to point out that we, sometime in the middle of the fall, we started to, on a daily basis, report cases, whether we had 0 cases or not, to the state and CUNY. We were already in the practice of reporting those, but this was a simple form, online form, and it feeds a searchable database, sort of a repository of all higher ed cases across the state. You can go on there and see how we, what we're reporting. What I do want to really put a focus on is that in our current state, the scenario C, we've really been in restricted access, which means we know who is on campus and we're tracking the comings and goings of people. Everyone who comes on campus has to go through an attestation, sort of a training of sorts, to be aware of policies, including the requirement to stay home if they're sick or have symptoms. So that right there is key. Even as we move into the fall, that will remain in place. I'm not sure if Everbridge or C-Entry, which are fantastic for these small numbers, I don't know how that will evolve. But if you arrive on campus and become sick during the day, we've identified these rooms that allow for easy isolation. But the message would be, if you can go home safely, do so, and you're not, we don't want you on campus if you don't need assistance to get home or get help. Reporting has been something that we have taken seriously from day one, and we have a form on our website that should be still easy to find. And we're still, actually, we get reports and people use that form to ask us questions if they're unsure of something. But it is how we were in the beginning, finding out about symptomatic students, faculty, and staff. One of the policies that is covered in that training is that you have to report that you are, if you're positive, if you test positive, or if you have symptoms consistent with coronavirus, to your supervisor or to the campus through student affairs. Reporting can happen through an email, through a phone call, or through this form. What do we do once we get that notification? First of all, there's leadership is notified. Whether it be me or the coronavirus liaison, Ms. Murray Richards, we speak with the case and we identify where the case might have been exposed. That's been easier to suss out in these last couple of months because we have been so careful. And luckily, we have not had but maybe one case where we, all of these cases, the exposure is not on campus. And we advise them to seek that, healthcare, speak with their healthcare practitioner. We also use that time to identify close contacts. We do some of that contact tracing right then and there because it's taken the city so long, or the state so long, to get back to cases. It's been better for us to do that work on our own. And that's helped us to immediately, within the day, the same day, notify those on campus who were close contacts, notify others who have been on campus, as well as CUNY and the state. I immediately notified custodians and Steve Aliano, who schedule a post-positive case cleaning and disinfection after the space has been aired out. And we put in place the CUNY policy, which is, if you haven't been on campus and you haven't gone through Everbridge, is stated pretty much right there, as in 10 days, you are deactivated from being on campus. You must stay home and stay isolated or in precautionary quarantine. And then at the end of that period, you must get a negative test and provide that test to the liaison or student affairs before you're let back on campus.
Okay, thank you. People are also asking, will there be mask mandates? I mean, which there are in New York State. But.
That's our plan. That's our plan. We have one in place now. You're required to wear a mask on campus, whether you're outside or in a classroom. Certainly we'll be tracking what the state says on that. It may change, but now it's the law to wear it indoors, and we require it on campus unless you are in a private office where there is a door and you can, safely, you can shut that door, and in that case, you may take off your mask in that space. Just say one other thing. Mm-hmm. Masks are readily available on campus. As part of their work, our student public health ambassadors have been going around. Ooh, I wonder if I have my. I don't know, can you see it? I'm modeling the Brooklyn College mask. We have these masks available, and we make them available, and we have gentle reminders, but we also have a pretty stiff review if there are repeat instances where we have observed people not wearing a mask. In fact, we have had one instance of a contractor who was barred from returning because of lack of mask use. I know this is going to raise some issues that questions people have about enforcement, and we are exploring that with CUNY, and I believe we have maybe some responses later on in the presentation.
Yeah, the chat is sort of blowing up with people asking about how will mask wearing be enforced. So I think we might have to perhaps give a full answer on that later, and we realize that people want to know that, and we will get back to everyone. Next question is for Joe. How will ventilation and air quality be surveyed and maintained in any space? I saw a lot of questions about this in the chat too.
All right. I guess you guys all know me. I'm the superintendent of facilities HVAC. My crew of 14, we maintain, monitor all the cooling, heating, and ventilation on campus. Pre-COVID, my staff did, physical inspections of all the equipment, and also we're able to monitor the equipment through our BMS system, which is a building management system that monitors the operation and airflow. We also do preventive maintenance on a regular basis, which includes changing the air filters, changing belts, greasing and lubing the equipment, checking the outdoor air dampers to make sure and the return air dampers to make sure they operate so we get the proper airflows. And then we inspect all the controls, so we have, cooling and heating as necessary. We also respond to the occupant, issues of ventilation, whether it's cooling, heating, or airflow. We also, where it gets called in either 5885 or 5478. Or sometimes comes through health and safety, or even the facility staff of their own. And then, our last thing we do typically is, and then we notify management of our needs for, doing repairs of equipment that's down, and that gets notified to the faculty and clientele, usually through a blanket email. Post-COVID, though, it's come to really light, how critical the ventilation and the air conditioning systems are for preventing the spread. So the college, immediately after everybody was off site, we were initiated to evaluate the campus at large and what its ventilation, each building's ventilation situation was. And the campus fell into four categories. Buildings with COVID compliant CDC ventilation and filtration, which means at least a MERV 13 filter. Carrie will explain to you later a little bit more on that. Then a mechanical ventilation system that had COVID compliant ventilation, but a insufficient filtration system. Then there were areas that had just mechanical cooling, but not ventilation. And then natural ventilation with exhaust. What this evaluation did, and what we've done since then, with regards to changing some of our operating criteria to make it safer for everybody, is you know, where we have COVID compliant ventilation, that means basically 20% or more air. We maintain that or increase it as possible, you know, up to 100% depending on the air handler. We've also initiating running our air handlers 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that we flush the buildings overnight where people are gone. We've turned off demand response systems so we don't throttle down the air handling systems at when the buildings are unoccupied. So again, we ventilate so that the buildings are fresh and as clean as possible when you return. Then the last thing we did was we stepped up our field inspections, both with my staff and health and safety has been assisting us on this with you know, inspections of airflow to look, you know, critical locations. You know, the natural the areas with natural ventilation or blended natural ventilation, which means either a non-compliant mechanical cooling system or a exhaust system only with windows. You know, in those locations, you know, further evaluation is going to need to be done between health and safety planning and I guess assistance by, you know, the HVAC department to what we can do and, you know, and what the impact is on occupancy.
So we're following CDC, which also references the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers task force guidelines. So there's no single prescriptive approach to providing safe ventilation. It's a range of things, and the idea is ventilation is just one layer of safety precautions and measures that need to be taken, and you can achieve that by various ways of because ventilation systems are very complex and varied, and that's true on our campus as well as anywhere else you go. Any other campus, it's the same thing. Our ventilation, I put this in 4 buckets, and there's a lot of nuance here, and we're not going to get into the nuance, but the reason that it's important to understand this is because those buckets feed into how we are going to schedule your classes and students' time on campus. If they meet these 4 criteria, then we are going to use that general safety margin of 6 feet. If they don't meet that criteria, in which case it is, we can't do any enhancements and the ventilation is not very consistent, then we are applying a more de-densified or a higher level of safety margin. And in some cases, that may mean that we need to go back to the drawing table and drawing board and review our options, because you know, a space that is 400 square feet and can only manage 3 people may not meet the needs of the English department, for instance. Now, we are exploring how to communicate that information to you at the room level. Know that we have that information. We are using that information to make decisions, but right now it is it's evolving, and we are partway there. I'm going to ask Marcus to move forward 1 slide, and so this is just for those spaces that have mechanical ventilation. It's got to be 20% up to 100% unless it has some enhancement, and that percentage in some cases is set by us. In some cases it's set by how comfortable you are. If it's a hot day outside, then we're not going to bring in as much outdoor air. Where you see that it changed from green to blue, that's that filtration, or it's outdoor air entirely. But that's that MERV 13 or MERV 14 filter before it gets delivered. So where we have mechanical ventilation, all the air that is discharged into that space has gone through a filter. I just want to make sure that's very clear and to everyone, because there's maybe concern about windowless spaces. Okay, moving on to the next slide down. Just a very simple graphic. It's so simple, you know it, we can move on. But basically, the idea is that we are using the highest grade filter before we get to a hospital grade. MERV 13 is what's recommended. In many cases, we're able, and it has to do with the configuration of the unit itself, we're able to have MERV 14, and we've always had MERV 14, actually. Okay, move on to the next slide. And this is just another simple graphic showing how coronavirus particles are getting captured at a higher rate or a higher efficiency rate in MERV 13 or 14. And in most of our systems, we have a pre-filter as well. Okay, move on to the next one. And this is the one that most people want to see. And this is a tiny font for those of us not able to see, but by building, these are the broad categories that we're looking at. Do you have windows? What kind of mechanical ventilation do you have in place? If it's mechanical, how much outside air? Is that air that gets recirculated filtered? And we're surveying all this. And of the instructional spaces, we have gone through nearly 100% in James Hall, Ingersoll Hall, Roosevelt Hall, Whitehead. We're making our way through Boylan. There's some complicated spaces in there. And we're continuing to work through these spaces. We're out in droves to the degree that we can, droves meaning 2 of us or 3 of us at a time. But we're doing this work, and it takes time. So I really appreciate everybody being patient, but this is the matching up. We're taking this data, we're matching it up with what you've given us in the enrollment and the schedule, and we're going to be talking to you and giving you that information.
I just want to point out 3 things that are in the chat, which answer several people's questions. The URL for Brooklyn College's re-entry plan is in there. The URL for the COVID tracker is also in the chat. And all of the names of the committee members for the RRB committee, that's the re-entry committee, are also listed in there, just for people asking for those specific bits of information. So I think we are now ready to answer questions from the live chat, and they've been being collected this entire time. I wanted to just make a note that questions about a vaccine mandate, questions about the enforcement of various safety measures on campus and any consequences related to those are really things that cannot be answered at this forum. I will tell you that currently New York State, New York City, and CUNY haven't yet, and I think you've probably heard this at other meetings, haven't yet set guidelines for these things about vaccination and definitive guidelines about mask wearing, checking software, or remote work policies, which I know also a lot of people have questions. So I just want to announce that as soon as that information becomes available, it will be shared with the campus community. I too would like to know some of these things. I think we all would. So moving on to questions that we have culled from the chat, starting with questions about social distancing and occupancy. For in-person and hybrid courses, where will classes be held? Will courses with 20 to 30 students be in classrooms or lecture halls? If a regular size class is 25 to 40 students? I think that this question is based on the charts that you put up before that show that the auditorium, for example, only fits 19. So the question is, how will those extra people be accommodated?
We have had some hybrid courses with a combination of in-person and remote learning. Certainly, if we have to maintain 6-foot spacing, I mean, clearly, you see, we're not going to be able to have, 40 people in a class, 30 people, or maybe even, if you can put 20 people in Tanger, but we can't. I mean, how are we going to accommodate everybody? So, I mean, we're still awaiting guidance on what the situation is for fall. We don't really know yet, but if we're to maintain this, then yeah, things are going to have to be mostly remote. And then some things that have to be in person, we'll have to find spaces for them. And we're going to look at the ventilation, what spaces can accommodate, the requirements. And so those we're kind of doing on a case-by-case basis. So be patient with us as we work through. We've gotten a lot of requests from departments, and as we continue to, we have kind of a first pass at all of the teaching spaces, but some of them, for example, in Old Ingersoll, in Boylan, which do not have building mechanical ventilation, there's some spaces where the spacing can be reduced from 12 feet apart to 6 feet apart because we've added certain enhancements like UVC to disinfect the air, or adding an exhaust fan. Certain combinations where we can enhance the ventilation enough that we can go with 6-foot spacing. But of course, 6 foot also it's not ideal. So we're looking at everything on a case-by-case basis. So that's,
Okay.
where we are now.
Thank you. So we have a question about a specific room. What did we decide, team, about those? Are we able to answer those? This is from Physical Education Kinesiology, is talking about that they require good ventilation and a clean room and equipment in West Quad 205. Or are we holding?
Yeah, I think we said the specific questions, with the specific departments and in those needs, instead of doing it, we have to look at the individual space instead of doing it kind of with everybody.
Facilities team is going around, that those specific rooms will be addressed. Another question about social distancing occupancy is, will not-for-profit organizations holding classes at Brooklyn College be notified of their requirements?
Okay, I just wanted to back up and acknowledge that when we talk about good ventilation and air quality, that people have had, we all experienced pre-COVID, maybe uncomfortable indoor air quality or indoor environmental conditions. We may have had environmental indoor air quality concerns, and yes, there is a relationship, but I do want to just say that that indoor air quality as it relates to COVID has to do with the percent of outdoor air and the filtration of that air. There are other factors that may feed into an occupant's experience of whether a space has a good indoor air quality or not, including generation of contaminants within the space. But I just want to acknowledge that. But I think it's an important thing to, if you have specific areas that you have concerns about, we are wanting to hear about those, but not at this forum.
Selena from the lab, the web lab. Just wanted to say that I do understand where you're coming from in terms of the ventilation, the new ventilation necessity, and what previous conditions, ventilation conditions have happened around the campus. So I understand where you're coming from. However, I think that we've got to deal with these issues, basically.
Right. And we, where we have ventilation, where we are not meeting our standards for coronavirus safety, that results in reducing the number of people in the space. Just by the very fact that we reduce the number of people using a 6-foot safety margin, it automatically means that there's more fresh air per person. Fresh air, if you divvy it out by the occupants, we've reduced by necessity, but we've increased the percent and the actual volume of fresh air per person in the space. So just with that, we have better air quality, if you will, and it's safer from a COVID standpoint. But I hear what you're saying, Selena, and it's, we are going to take every space. We're looking at every space and making, coming up with solutions for each space.
Okay. So another question I'll just quickly answer. People are asking about where the masks are on campus, and the Brooklyn College masks are being handed out by student health and safety officers who visit on-campus classes. That's generally how they're handed out right now. Here is a social distancing question. Are there design recommendations for those of us who work at public service desks? How can we interact with students while still maintaining 6 feet?
That's a really good question. Duradashini, maybe you could take this one.
For student-facing offices, we are going to be installing plexiglass partitions, basically like a sneeze guard. So it doesn't mean that actually you should still be closer than 6 feet. It's some protection, but I understand it's like, how do you interact with everybody from 6 feet away? We will have the plexiglass in place, but yeah, it's well noted. So.
Right, and then the other thing is that in those spaces that have historically been high volume customer service or student interaction, there's also what we've done and with the small volume that we have on campus now is we have visual markers, 6-foot markers to have people queue up to ensure that we don't have a congregation of students or other clientele in a small space. So that helps. But just for that interaction, that's where the barriers are helpful.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Next question. For students or instructors who have a break between classes, where on campus can they be so as not to have to leave campus and come back? Yeah, good question, especially with Everbridge.
Right. Well, we don't know how CUNY, what CUNY is going to be requiring or recommending in terms of health screening and restricted access, controlling access to the campus come fall, because we understand that those numbers are going to be a lot much greater, and that volume is going to potentially cause bottlenecks, which is antithetical to social distancing. So we don't want to see that. But just to get to your point, we're exploring all of our large spaces on campus, including the Georgian Room and Student Center, to see, and we're working with IT, which I think we're going to probably bring them in as another forum in the future, right, Alan? To discuss how Wi-Fi will work, because that's the limiting factor. But we know we need to provide for and support those students who are moving between an fully online class and a fully in-person class, so that they don't have to leave campus. I've gotten anecdotal from the students who work with me that that's been an issue, and it's the way it's been, and it's meant perhaps smaller numbers on campus. We're gonna address that for the fall, because we need to have those that ability and that capacity on campus. We just don't know the actual numbers, and part of it is, like I said, the Wi-Fi service in these spaces.
We have also a question. How likely is human subject research? How likely is it that human subject research can be resumed on campus over the summer?
That's a very specific question that I think needs, if you're involved in human research, human subjects research, there's CUNY guidelines on that, and we have an existing process for reviewing those applications and details of that research need. We're not turning away any application. So if you have a need or pending a grant that you're putting in, please bring that to the RRB through your chair and the provost.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, let's see. Will office occupants be informed on whether or not their space is CDC compliant regarding ventilation, and if improvements were made? I saw a lot of questions about that in the chat. So when you guys go in and do your test of the air quality, let's say, how are you going to post that information, or how will people find out about their offices?
This is something that we're continuing to explore. There is, the information that's fed into our decision making about maximum occupancy. So if the maximum occupancy is based on a 6-foot distance, then you know that it's met the standard. And it's not so much that a 12-foot safety margin doesn't meet the standard, it's just that it's safer to de-densify that space. I think that the only situation in which a space doesn't meet the CDC criteria would be a space that has no ventilation and has more than one person in it. So we would not be allowing the use of that space for more than one person. So there are spaces that may be small, which may have no additional enhancement, but which can support a faculty person because it's a one-person office.
Next question is, oh yes, there will be a recording of this session made available, and I believe we're also trying to do it as a transcript in case you don't want to watch this. A question about mandatory testing. New York City Public Schools already do this. Will Brooklyn College or CUNY be doing that as the public schools do? Which might be in a category of us not being able to answer that question, I believe, because that has to come from CUNY Central to us, right? Yeah, Carrie is nodding her head.
Correct.
So the public school system, if you have public schools kids, you know that you sign a form and a group of them get tested regularly so they can try and catch positive cases, especially because kids often are symptomless, but they might have COVID. And so it would be up to CUNY Central, so that's a question that we would have to wait for their answer on.
I'll just say this, that our message, let's say that we don't have a mandatory testing or a testing regimen that's available to us on campus. The message has been, and it's become increasingly easy to do so, the message has been if you work outside of the home, get tested regularly. And New York City specifically said every month. I have been doing that. It has gotten much easier, but I also, when things were not, the lines were long, I did go to a health and hospital priority testing location, and I was, along with health and hospital employees, I was able to get to the front of the line, if you will. So it's available to everyone, and it's efficient. So take advantage of it, and free.
Thank you. So
I see someone said something about Brooklyn College being a vaccination site.
yes,
We've done walkthroughs with, and the president has done walkthroughs with various bodies to assess whether our site is a good candidate. And so we're not opposed to it, for sure. Medgar Evers is just down the street. So that's, I don't know if we'll be considered, but we're open to it.
and I see to add that Marcus has also put in the chat sort of updated information on priority testing if you want to get a test at any point, which is appreciated. Somebody asked the question, would testing still be recommended after receiving the vaccine? I would say that you should look at the CDC guidelines on that. And I believe, having checked that sort of recently myself, that they say, yes, it's still good to test. But I checked the CDC. Okay, we also have a question. How will we keep track of everyone on campus when we have a large number of in-person courses? Our current system does not seem like it'll work very well when we scale up. And I do think, Carrie, that you have indicated that Everbridge might not scale up. So I guess maybe do we have plans or ideas about, as we get more people on campus, what we will do yet?
I would just be postulating. It does seem like scaling up, just the sheer number and the gating, the fact that we're not fully open, gates wide open. And we don't have a card reading system. makes for a challenge. I don't know.
Okay. Here's a different sort of question, but similar maybe to the people who work at desks that face students. What about people who work in desks where it's actually shared with somebody else or they're right next to each other? Are there going to be partitions there? Are we going to be reorganizing office spaces? Or are those being, looked at?
Darshini, could you take that one on? Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, we've started with the instructional spaces, and kind of the next category of spaces we're looking at is the shared offices, because we know that's a concern. So depending on the spacing in the offices, the ventilation in the offices, and also depending on CUNY's remote work policy, which we don't know anything about yet. It's possible that people may need to come in on alternate days. We don't quite have enough information, but also we're sort of gathering all the information to do the space analysis for all of the shared office spaces. So we'll have that pretty soon. And as Carrie's saying, we're still figuring out what's the best way to communicate all of this information to everyone. And we haven't figured that out yet. So we'll get back to you on it, but we're working on it.
Yeah. I think we got a lot of questions about ventilation, which I think were pretty much all covered in Carrie's and Joe's discussion of ventilation, except maybe how does a heater affect air filtration? Or is that sort of you're using all the same formulas regardless of whether the heat is on?
Joe.
Yeah, a localized heater will not affect the ventilation issue. It's actually not a recommended policy for on campus to be using an outside heater. If you have a heater and your space is having a problem, I would prefer you to call into 5885 and we'll repair it.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. I think we also added.
Jen, I'm going to add on to Joe's response because it does make me think about inclement weather and use of windows. Use of windows and opening windows is going to be a key piece to densifying our campus, particularly in those locations where we have, it'll be a necessity in those locations where it's primarily natural ventilation or blended ventilation, such as Whitehead. But as we know and have experienced in really cold months, we're going to have some way of stewarding those window opening and closings to make sure that we are protecting our building infrastructure against deep freezes and pipe breaks and
rain,
other things. Rain. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to require some new processes to ensure that we can maximize our use of opening windows.
I think we're going to be able to squeeze in maybe one or two more questions before we wrap up. This is one that is about when people have been fully vaccinated, is the Everbridge app gonna sort of reflect that? So
we're awaiting CUNY revisions that would incorporate vaccination status into everything from quarantine requirements to post-travel quarantine. As of now, we know that CDC is still recommending that even if you're vaccinated, that you minimize your indoor close contact and continue to stay masked with people who are not vaccinated. So you know, workplaces have, I would suspect that a very small percentage of workplaces are trying to, you know, deal with that nuance of, you know, until we have a larger, higher percentage of vaccinated status, or if we're able to know your vaccination status. Right now, we are not even asking what your status is, and we don't have a method for collecting that information.
The very last question, it's about big public spaces like the library. How will the numbers in spaces be tracked there? Because it's not like going to a specific room, right? You move when you're in the library. You know, if you're looking for books in 1985.
Well, that we're going to do some, we haven't really had our planning meeting with the library yet. So we're going to look to them for their ideas and hear about what other libraries are doing. You know, all of you are subject matter experts in your own field. And I'm sure that there's a lot of chats and blogs and whatever that where people are sharing ideas on how to safely come back and reopen, and in some cases they've been open. We're happy to have you come to the table with ideas and a plan. Tell us what you want to do and what you think will work. That is a challenge. Is, you know, can we have somebody at the door counting the numbers? Probably not. Will we be doing it more by just marking off those and removing those furnitures that don't allow for social distancing? Probably. So limiting through design and configuration.
Okay, thank you. So I think because we're almost at 3:30, we have to wrap up. I want to just answer a few things. One is that our committee is going to be meeting again soon. Somebody asked in early May. I don't have the exact date, but we will be, I think, talking about the next time we do a public thing like this, because we're not planning on this being the last one, right, Alan? Just a big thank you to not only our panelists today, Carrie, Duradashini, and Joe, but all the people behind the scenes, David, Dorothy, and Marcus, other members of Campus Planning Committee who helped as well, Stanley Peterbursky, Tracy Wong, and Jonathan Dalu, our student rep. And so many people in facilities and environmental health and safety. There were a lot of really nice props in the chat to our custodial staff, so I hope that gets passed on to them. And thank you for coming. Alan, did you have anything else you needed to say?
Yeah, great. No, I just want to add, I want to thank Jen for her leadership and collaboration throughout her tenure on the faculty, council, campus planning committee. We worked with Ryan Morelli the last cycle. He was amazing. I'm so happy that we could work collaboratively, with the faculty and our students and our staff to deal with these critical issues. As you could see, this is not easy. This is extremely complicated. We're dealing with many, many spaces and many, many issues. But I was so pleased looking at the chat that we've thought about everything that was asked. So there's no surprises. It's just very complicated. We are looking forward to continuing these discussions and having more detailed discussions with individual divisions and managers, et cetera, because we know the individual questions are equally important. Please bear with us a little longer as we put all the pieces together a little further so we could have much more informed discussions and hopefully make more finalized plans, from now until the start of the semester. So again, and we will be posting more information as well.